Bless you and welcome. I want to say we're a little bit of a small group for this size space, but this space makes it a lot easier to do streaming. So welcome all the folks who are joining us on Zoom. I heard from at least a couple of folks who were planning, and it's so good to have you with us. The folks who are here in person, I think you all got a hand-drawn, half-drawn photocopy of this map of some imaginary place. Georgia can put that in the chat if you'd like to download it, but you can just use a blank piece of paper and draw an imaginary map on it as an aid to your reflection this evening. If you're here in person, you can either use the side that has stuff I drew on it already, or the other side is conveniently blank for your map drawing joy. I had the joy and honor of going on sabbatical as part of my work as a pastor here. I was on sabbatical from August the 1st to October 31st. And it's our custom and practice that when our pastors go on sabbatical, they choose, or propose, I guess, a theme or an area of study or focus. I realized as I was preparing for and praying on the sabbatical, that a thing I love is learning more about the place I live. And so rather than take on a particular new skill I wanted to learn, rather than travel a whole bunch, I wanted to get to know this place, and by this place I mean Bellingham and Whatcom County, a little better. It became immediately obvious and was kind of overwhelming when I started my sabbatical that getting to know Whatcom County is like the entire size of this sanctuary, and the capacity that I had for my travels was about this big. And so as soon as I kind of made peace with the fact that learning my community is in fact a lifelong practice and goal and joy and challenge for me, then I was able to get into some really interesting stuff. I've kind of framed my presentation tonight around theologies of place, and I'm going to invite us to explore our own maybe theologies of place or ways of imagining places or how places make meaning and vice versa via the lens of some of the stuff I did on my sabbatical. We're going to start by looking at some maps. Apparently, several of us in this room love maps. Wait. Oh, there we go. Does anyone recognize this map? This is a little bit of a deep cut. Okay, so as I was walking around town one day, I was remembering that some of the places I love and have this kind of sense memory of other places I've walked around are not real places. This is a city map of Vivek, the largest city in Vardenfall in the Elder Scrolls world. It's from I know it from the video game Morrowind, which came out on Xbox in about 2000 or so. And I spent 2 different summers when I was in grad school, and then again when I was at my first call, playing just a ton of this game. And so it's a first-person game, so you're walking around this city, you're getting to know who hangs out on what corners, what the architecture is like, what the aesthetics is like, how it's different from the other cities in the game. And so it struck me that I can develop a way of knowing a place, even if the place is fictional. You might think about what places you love that are fictional in video games, cities you love from books or movies. I think it's really interesting to think about my own conception of a real place, Bellingham, such as it is, and how that interfaces with the imaginary. Does anyone recognize this spot? Yeah, so this is one of the alleys downtown between, I want to say, Railroad and, what is that, Cornwall? I forget which block. This particular photograph is on the wall of my office. Some of you know Bill and Kathy Litticoat, their son Danny, when he worked for Northwest Youth Services, did a project where he gave young people served by Northwest Youth Services, young people experiencing homelessness or on the edges of homelessness, just disposable cameras and sent them out to do kind of a photography project. And I think they worked with some of the photography folks at one of the colleges. And this one was one of the ones that came back. They were giving these away or raffling them at the, their fundraiser. And I love alleys. Almost always, given a choice between cutting through an alley and going the regular route, I'll choose the alley. I recognize that's a place of enormous privilege for me as an able-bodied, male-presenting white person. And it's super interesting. There's cool stuff in the alleys, and you get to chat with gardeners, and you just never know what's going to happen in the alley. So part of the intention of my project was to go routes that I hadn't gone before. I think of this one morning where I was out driving to go visit a spot in Blaine that someone had suggested, and I went by this convenience store on kind of the northwest corner of town that I've driven by 100 times, and I've never been inside, and I've always wondered how that neighborhood could support a convenience store. So I've now been inside that convenience store. I still don't know who shops there or why. It's lovely, but it was like getting a little deeper into the mystery. And it was a gift to have the time and expansiveness to follow that curiosity. This is the other piece of art on that same wall, or one of the other three on that same wall. This is maybe a little bit hard to make out. So this is subway maps being printed. This is subway maps being printed not by transit workers, but by activists. In 2002, I think somewhere in the early 2000s, in Buenos Aires there was enormous popular uprisings, and the police used violence against the protesters. Two of the protesters, Dario, a young man named Dario, and a young man named Maxi, were killed at a protest event at a subway station. And so in their memory, their fellow workers and other activists made new maps for the subways and put them up in all the cars that instead of saying the old name for the station said Estación Dario and Maxi, like Dario and Maxi Station. And you can see there's a little photo, there's a little drawing of them maybe you can see, or you can look in my office. My buddy Noah was down there taking photos at the time. That station, if you can look it up, is still called Estación Dario and Maxi. And so I think it's sometimes important for people to name a place and claim a place as their own, even when they have to sidestep or work around or get a little trickstery about names of places. So, oh yeah, one more of these. Anyone recognize this map? This is a great one. Oh, that's a good guess. So the guess was the dispatch map for maybe WTA. This is the Whatcom wastewater treatment plant. So you can watch your sewage being treated and made into water that's safe-ish to go out into the bay on that map. Got to go on a great tour of the water treatment plants in Bellingham. And then this, one more of these, name the map. It looks like a topographical map, and it does list depths. And yeah, we have a ringer on this one. So this is the Bellingham coal mine. So also this summer I moved to Birchwood. Under Birchwood and the surrounding areas, there's something like 200 miles of coal mine from the Bellingham coal mine that closed in 1955. So to me, I mean, it's interesting because it's local history and it's in my neighborhood. There's a lot to say about that, but it's also interesting. So two things I'll say about that. One is it was helpful for me to reflect on how industry shaped our town. We're a town that, as soon as white folks got here, was about extraction, timber, canneries, coal mines. And has kind of slowly transitioned away from that in some way, but it makes me wonder what we're extracting these days and like what legacy those extractive industries hold for us. So for example, like I live in Birchwood, we share a lot with our landlords, and it's a big lot because they were made for coal mine workers who didn't have regular work sometimes, and so needed to have small farms to help support them. There's all kinds of ways this stuff is all trapped up. So this is all to say, I got to be curious in my sabbatical. Those are the most like just slides of maps parts. So if you like that part, you can head home now, or wait till next time. So I invite you to take a look at your map and find somebody you know a little bit, maybe a person you came with or a person you already know. And together figure out something about where is your curiosity taking you these days, and write or draw it on your map. There's a little map library. I wasn't sure what would be symbolically appropriate, but one of the coolest places I visited on my sabbatical is the Western Washington University Map Library, which is, if you haven't been, I can't recommend highly enough. If you want to look at maps of Whatcom County or Wyoming or Mars, they will hook you up. Free and open to the public. But they like it if you call ahead. Okay, so if you can just pair up and then maybe write in something near your map library or draw something about where your curiosity is taking you. It doesn't have to be related to this stuff. I just named some of my curiosities, but it also doesn't have to feel important. I think sometimes I want curiosity that like takes me someplace, but I don't know because I'm just curious about it. So go ahead, take maybe 3 or 4 minutes. Go. I invite you to kind of finish your thought, and then we'll kind of return to the group. Georgia, are the online folks doing all right? Yes. Cool. Thanks, online folks. Thank you. So I invite you to just note that on your map. I'm so curious about what you all wrote, so please feel free to tell me another time. I think the gift of the license and freedom and even mandate to follow my own curiosity was such a blessing and something that I really want to carry forward from my sabbatical. Wait, I forget where to point. Oh, whoa. No, okay. I ruined my, okay, pretend you didn't see that slide. Okay. So this map here is Wickersham, Washington. Has anyone been to Wickersham? Wickersham is a place in Whatcom County. It's a fascinating place because I got there a little early for the thing I was wanting to do there, and I wasn't sure I was in Wickersham because there is not much there. It feels a little bit like an intersection with a church at it. And the church is very closed, and no one was around. So I just kept driving, and then I came back at the appointed time for the Whatcom County Library bookmobile. I hope you can see the deep, fervent, and earnest joy in my face at visiting the Whatcom County bookmobile. I think this is like not relevant particularly to the map project, but I want to name that one of the joys about this visit is I was completing a goal that I set for myself maybe 7 years ago to visit all of the Whatcom County libraries, public libraries. And so this was my final one after a lovely morning in Point Roberts, but it was real drive. The bookmobile is rad. You should all go. I checked out some books, but it was so fun to watch for just 10 or 15 minutes that I was there, the way community immediately began to bubble up around this library that's there once a week for a couple of hours. Some of that is the staffing. There's wonderful staff there. Some of that is the resources. But some of that is just there's a thing happening, and so things arise around it. So I'm curious, what's a place in your life that is sacred not because of what it looks like or the beautiful view, but is sacred because of what happened there or what happens there on the regular? So for example, maybe there's a place in town where you heard life-changing news. I can remember where it was where I got the call inviting me to work for First Congregational Church of Bellingham. It's in the produce section at Safeway. But whatever your spot is, or maybe it's something that you've seen happen somewhere and it just stays with you. So in the same way that, I'm sure Wickersham is a beautiful and sacred place on its own, no shade for that, but for me, the bookmobile was so special. So there's a little spot that says Festival Grounds on your imaginary map, or I guess your real map of imaginary places. It's complicated. I invite you to think with a buddy about what's a place like that. And this time, I want you to sit with somebody who you don't know particularly well, if you can find somebody like that. So go ahead, we'll take about 5 minutes. What place becomes sacred to you because of what happens there? Thank you all. I was just up here trying to wait because I'm so excited, but what a joy to hear y'all sharing with each other. If there was a Spotify playlist or a CD you could get of
Pretty soon we'll get to see him.
Kind folks sharing earnestly with one another, parentheses background noise, I feel like that would be really strong, soothing. Thank you for that. And thank you, Zoom folks, continuing. This next little bit I don't have a slide for because... Okay. Are you doing that, Georgia, or am I doing that?
If I click off of the PowerPoint.
I see. Cool. Great. Welcome person arriving. You're just in time for an interesting part. I was just curious. Sorry. It's the clicker's new technology for me, so I'm really excited about it. Part of the joy of my sabbatical is that I had access to a resource that is usually allocated, namely Sunday mornings. I love to be here with some of y'all on Sunday mornings, and it was also really fun to be what else do I want to do? I visited other churches. I checked out the way that other religious communities used their own place and had their own sense of space. One time we decided to go to the 100-acre wood right by Fairhaven Park there. Me and my partner and my kiddo, who's 5. I didn't take any pictures that day, which is fine. Maybe we took some later on, but because it was Sunday morning and me and my partner are both church nerds, very deeply, we brought some bread and some juice so we could have a little forest communion. And it was not fancy, and it was not quiet because children, and it was not particularly reflective because we're kind of fitting it in the midst of what else we could wrangle. And it was beautiful and kind of captivating and intriguing. And it got me thinking about practices that I associate with church in the sense of physical space that might want to get a little farther out of the building. There's a spot on your map. Hold that thought. Let's look at the spot on the map. What is it? It's the Sacred and the Wild, it's called. How convenient. I remembered that I didn't have a pithy name for it. That spot there, I want to invite you to reflect, again, with somebody else. Actually, no. Let's reflect just ourselves this time. Have some silence and quiet for the non-extroverts among us. Is there some part of your faith or ethical or spiritual practice that has been mostly in your house or mostly in your house of worship that you feel invited to bring and do in some more public way? You know, maybe this is take a milk crate downtown and do some street preaching, Sharon, but maybe this is having communion with somebody you love in a beautiful spot. Maybe this is just bringing a song you love out loud or in your heart or on your headphones to some place that is a place of stress or challenge for you. I want to, I'm noticing that for me this category feels a little hard to define, and I want to let it just be that. So if nothing comes up for you, thanks be to God, that's fine. Just keep it blank and let it be mystery. But if an invitation comes up for you, then also thanks be to God. So we'll just take 4 or 5 minutes and have a little pause. And by the way, there's space on this map for a reason. So if there's other stuff that's coming up that doesn't fit in one of these little sectors, like draw or write or scribble, whatever your heart wants. Thanks. Well, I passed by this big old Bible that we have up here. One of the ways I interact with this sacred space is on Sundays, if I have time and space, and if I really feel like I'm kind of put together before service, I'll have time to set this Bible to the scripture for the week. And sometimes we're 10 minutes in and I notice that I didn't, and I know that was a hectic morning, and that's all right too. And sometimes somebody else does it. Tonight, I was all set for this because I was so excited, and I had the time. And I put it to Ezekiel chapter 1, which is this weird and beautiful vision of God. And it's you might know the Ezekiel Saw the Wheel song. It's like a spiritual. But it does have a vision of God in a throne that's on wheels. And it's kind of writing in the aftermath of the destruction of the temple. And this radical and timely and timeless vision of God's presence being something that moves and can kind of meet us in expected and unexpected places. So it just felt right for Theology of Place. Anyway, just had to squeeze a little Bible nerd into there. Okay. This is me at 177 Bleecker Street, because 177A Bleecker Street is not a real address. I went to New York this summer to visit my best friend and my partner's sister, and got to take a morning and just walk around. 177A Bleecker Street is where Doctor Strange lives in the Marvel comics, in the movies anyway. And I love me a magical wizard superhero person, and it was kind of on the way, and so I wanted to have a little moment of pilgrimage at this place that was not significant, particularly in our world, although I'm sure this little bodega and silver and gold store are cool, but has significance in story. This is me outside the site of Star House. Shortly after the Stonewall Uprising, Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera started STAR, Street Transvestite Action Revolutionaries, the best acronym in the history of activism, in my opinion. And soon after, they got a house, and they let young trans people and other queer young people experiencing homelessness come and stay in the house. So, as far as I know, this is the first documented shelter for queer young people in the US and maybe anywhere in kind of the modern era. So it turned out to be just a couple miles from where I was staying, so I got to walk there and stand outside it. There's no plaque. It's not a museum. It's like you can see the confused guy trying to work on his laptop in there. It's like somebody's condo, but it had meaning to me to go visit this place that meant so much to my ministry, to my personhood, to my identity, to the legacy that I try to live into. So there's a spot on your map, and it's drawn to look like not anything I could recognize, kind of on purpose, because I wasn't sure what your site of pilgrimage would look like. Pilgrimage is a complicated thing, and pilgrims in the US have a real complicated and problematic history. But the act of going somewhere in allegiance to your faith, in allegiance to how your heart calls you, is real ancient, and I think real sacred. After this, we'll talk a little bit about another trip I made on my sabbatical that I don't know why I went, and hope to never know exactly why I went. But just out of reverence for the mystery and intrigue and joy and love, I made the trip. So maybe there's a place that you could say right top of mind, I gotta go on the Camino de Santiago, the pilgrimage route there in Spain, or I gotta go to Jerusalem, or I gotta go see that giant clonal cluster of quaking aspen in Colorado. That might just be me. But maybe sit with it a minute. But go ahead and I want to try something else for pairing up. So what we're going to do in a moment, and then to talk about where we might want to go for pilgrimage. And if you knew all along, great. And if you just realized in this moment, great. And if it feels impossible to get there right now, fine, because this is imaginary maps, so no one's going to grade you on it. So if you identify primarily as a dog person, you're going to go like this. And if you identify primarily as a cat person, you're going to go like this. And if you're a little of both, you're going to go like this. Cat people go with cat people, dog people go with dog people. And if you don't care about dogs or cats, just don't put your hands on your face. And let's see if we can pair up that way. So in eastern Oregon, there's a place called Malheur National Forest. Malheur National Forest? Must be French. Malheuer, something. Don't quote me on that. The reason I went to the Malheur National Forest, there's kind of not much there except acres and acres and acres and acres and acres and acres of trees and beauty and creatures. One of the reasons I chose to take my sabbatical August through the end of October is that it would put me in what I think, or what I thought, was the best time of year to go visit the Malheur National Forest. The Malheur National Forest is, for me, most notable because it is the home of the humongous fungus. As you may know from hearing me or others talk about it, the humongous fungus is if you're familiar with honey mushrooms, it's that same type of fungus. It has a long scientific name that I do not know. It's about 700 acres in size. So you could imagine kind of like the sanctuary, and the social hall, and probably a little more, 700 times. It's between 2,000 and 8,000 years old. And as far as, at least, scientific consensus is concerned, it is the largest living thing in the world. You might ask, Davi, what made you want to go to the humongous fungus? And I would say, well, I still don't know, as mentioned earlier. What a joy to dust off my old camping skills and dust off my old camping equipment and stay in the town closest to the Malheur National Forest and drive to a logging road and then drive about 5 miles up a logging road, which isn't necessarily what a Toyota Yaris is designed for, and then walk about 5 miles, and a little more because I took a wrong turn, to this spot that was the humongous fungus. So this is my little backpack. I wasn't sure if I would have to spend a night out there, so I brought a lot of stuff, and that was fun too. You can see kind of here, there's mushrooms. Let me see if I can use the little pointy thing. I don't know. Maybe you can see the mushrooms, maybe you can't. My point is they're not that big. They're like this big. I saw some of them. I happened to go in one of the 2 times a year that the fungus fruits, that there's mushrooms coming out of the ground that are connected to this fungus or one like it. Mostly, you can't see anything. I called the ranger station, and they were like, look, there's nothing to see. And I was like, I know, just tell me what kind of bears are there. They were lovely. I didn't see any bears. The rangers were lovely. I saw some elk, they were lovely. But I didn't know when I entered the humongous fungus, and I didn't know when I left the humongous fungus. I had to trust, my little map and my GPS and my heart. But even the GPS couldn't tell me where the fungus stopped and ended, and I don't know that my heart could either.
This sounds like an X-Files.
It sounds like an X-Files episode? Yeah, I mean, it could have been. I made it back, and probably I'm not a fungus person. But part of the joy of it is that, I read about fungus in a little bit before and a little after my trip because it's great, and I love reading about stuff. And I learned about how I learned more about how fungus works as a network within a forest. The humongous fungus in particular mostly just wants to eat conifers, so I don't know how much resource sharing it does, but there are these mycorrhizomes, these networks of fungi, which maybe you've heard about or read about, that exist between trees and other plants in healthy forests. And they share resources and signs of warning. And how does information get transmitted through the fungus? It's complicated, and we kind of don't know. Reading this book about fungus was great because every chapter, the fungus guy is like, here's another thing we don't really know about fungus. This is my favorite illustration in that book. I will explain it. Or no, I will read the caption for it. This is from Entangled Life by Merlin Sheldrake, who also has a wonderful name. This is a map of a shared fungal network made by Kevin Byler, a scientist. The green shapes are Douglas fir trees, and the straight lines indicate linkages between tree roots and mycorrhizal fungi, those networks under the forest soil. The black dots mark the points where Byler collected samples. So I don't know if you can see, but there's lots of those, particularly towards the center. Genetically identical fungal networks are outlined in different colors. and so forth. The black border marks, this part blew my mind. The black border marks the 30 by 30 meter plot. So this is not a big area by any means. And an arrow points, you see the arrow in the bottom right there. An arrow points to the most highly connected tree, which was linked to 47 other trees. Because it's connected to quite a few who are connected to others, and so it's this network. When I walked through the Malheur National Forest, or any forest, when I walk through the trees that are in my neighborhood, I can't tell what's going on underground. There's an invitation for me in this picture, and I only kind of have words for it, so let me try. I wonder who in my neighborhood is this tree right here. And maybe it's not a tree. Maybe it's that really friendly dog that lives about a block and a half from me that's just always in her front yard, and she's old and she's kind to everybody. Maybe it's a store, maybe it's a tree. Who in my neighborhood is most connected? And that feels like kind of idle curiosity and impossible to know. But more importantly, and maybe most importantly, what are my connections like now? And how might I be being invited to strengthen them or grow new ones? So you'll notice on your map, there's a little section of, I tried to draw kind of like a swampy thing because I think of swamps when I think of fungus. I don't know that that's scientifically accurate, and tree roots and nurse logs and whatnot. I called it community connections. So I wonder, maybe it's curiosity for you. I want to have a cup of coffee with this person who knows everybody on the block. Maybe it's call for you. I have been thinking about getting to know this one organization, and I want to take my next graceful step towards that. Maybe it's some other call to growing or strengthening the web that connects you and me and our communities and these trees and the humongous fungus and all of us. But take some time, and if you'd like to pair with someone, pair with whoever you like. And if you'd like to sit by yourself and consider this, sit by yourself and consider this. This is the last kind of assigned reflection time, so use it however is most helpful. But take about 5 minutes and think about what connections you're being drawn to. So I think what's right, or I think what I'd like to invite us to is kind of pause there with our reflection. I've got a little song to sing us out. And then I was planning for this to go till 8:30, and it's only 8. So if anybody wants to stick around and talk about maps and draw and stuff, you're welcome. And if anybody wants to go home, also, I mean, obviously you're always welcome to leave. I want to thank you all for being here. I especially want to thank folks on Zoom. I think there's a real gift to being in a particular place for moments of reflection, and hopefully you have those cues and sensory stuff and all that stuff that can help wherever you're Zooming from, if it's your home or your office or wherever. But it is a gift to be here in person with all of you as well. And so thanks for all that you all have brought. The other thing I want to say is if any of these questions or something that you draw on your map next week or tomorrow or in the middle of the night feels alive to you, God, I would love to hear about that. It's one of my favorite parts of my job when someone reaches out and says, hey, there's this thing kind of brewing, or I've got this question, or whatever. I believe that to be true of Pastor Sharon as well. I'm getting a thumbs up from the back on that. And I think that's actually true of a lot of folks in this room and in this community. So I hope you'll find, when it's time to have a conversation partner or someone to pray or bless what you're feeling drawn to these days, I hope you find those folks, and I'm glad to be one of those people. So because I gave you a map, let me tell you one more map story. I got home from my humongous fungus trip kind of circuitously, which was lovely. I got to stop in some other Washington cities that I hadn't spent time in. But I got home on purpose on the equinox, or the day before the equinox, because I wanted to go to our little equinox gathering. And in my family, in my family, we often have a fire on the equinox and the fall equinox. And we're invited to bring, some poetry that reminds us of the equinox, but also something to burn. That might be something we want to really honor. That might be something we want to really kind of banish. It might just be something that has served its time and is now done. So I brought the map printouts that I printed down at the Oberlin Public Library and drove out to Eastern Oregon and kept in, I don't know if your packs have this, but my pack has this little zipper pouch right here that you can kind of reach while it's on you, kind of. That's where I like to keep my maps. And I took them out of there and I put them on the fire. And a little bit after that, the chorus to this song came up for me. And then this morning, the lyrics arrived just in time for tonight. So Sharon helped. Hear this prayer of blessing for you and for your community and for your maps and your wisdom and your learning and for when it's time to put those down. There's a hunger that has always walked beside you. There's a feeling that is brewing in your bones. There's a better way to wrestle and to wander. There's a voice that is still speaking from a stone. Burn the maps, tear the pages, take the route you know by heart. Burn the maps, tear the pages, find a brand new place to start. When you've waited in the quiet of the forest, when there's something deeper growing underground, when you listen to the mosses and the fungi, you'll get a taste of what is lost and what is found. Burn the maps, tear the pages, take the route you know by heart. Burn the maps, tear the pages, find a brand new place to start. If you've forgotten what it is to be a creature, if the lies have settled on you like a shroud, just remember that it's not their ways you're made for, and wait for love to call your name out loud. Burn the maps, tear the pages, take the route you know by heart. Burn the maps, tear the pages, find a brand new place to start. Maybe so. Amen. Thanks, everybody. Stick around if you want to chat. And blessings in your mapping.